My father was not in the war. He had bad eyes, for starting, for all the times that I ever knew him. The earliest I knew him, he always wore glasses, so that sort of ruled him out. If you ask me why I joined the services, it's hard to remember back at this point of time that at that stage the population of Australia was about 7 million. Almost every one of us was descended from a Brit, and the Britain was the mother country, and when it got into trouble, Australia and the other dominions just fell in behind and helped. And there was a very intense patriotism running through everyone, I think, at that stage. They all wanted to get into it, and I think most of the young people felt the same. So when I was 18, I was only 16 when the war started. So when I was 18, I got permission after a lot of trouble from my parents, because at that stage you weren't an adult until you were 21. So having finally and reluctantly got their permission, I joined the Air Force. That's it. Well, I was always keen on model aircraft. I used to make, like most kids, model aircraft and fly them, elastic bands and all that sort of stuff. And I used to read about Biggles in the First World War, flying his Sopwith Camels and SE-5As and all that sort of stuff. And that seemed to be the best choice. I couldn't imagine myself slashing around on the ground with an army, so that seemed to be the perfect solution. At the end of the induction course, when you had all these people put together to form a crew, they threw pilots, navigators, bomb aimers, wireless operators, gunners into this hangar. They said, well, you fellas sort yourselves out. And you just came out as distinct crews of 7 people. And it sounds a bit odd, but there was a lot of sort of jockeying before that. I know before I got into the hangar there to sort of decide it all, we were virtually decided, because I had a bomb aimer and a wireless operator who were very, very friendly together. They both married men. One was 27, one was 25. And they told me afterwards that they vetted carefully every pilot that was going into that hangar and came to the conclusion I was going to bring them back alive. And fortunately it worked out that way. But then the bomb aimer knew a navigator who he'd done a half course with, and so he came in. And the navigator knew a rear gunner who came in. The rear gunner knew a mid-upper gunner, rear gunner. And slowly but surely we had these things all sort of knutted together, so it was comparatively easy. I often wondered what happened. There must have been, at the end of all this, one pilot, one navigator, one wireless operator, all sitting around looking at each other, thinking to themselves, why weren't we picked? Bomber Command doesn't get enough recognition for all the things it did. Everyone reckoned it just went around bombing German cities. At least half of the operations were on other areas, not just bombing German cities. They were an amazingly versatile force. And they actually laid 30,000 tonnes of mines in all the German ports along the Baltic, which no one else could get to. And they sank no end of submarines, and they were so successful on the surface boats that the Swedes particularly said, if you want stuff, send your boats across here, because they were losing too many. That was just one little part of Bomber Command that no one even thinks about.
We also attacked the U-boat pens down the coast of France, from Brest to La Rochelle, or a couple of other ports down, about 3 or 4 ports. And that's another thing you'd never heard much about. People talked about blowing German houses up and what have you. But certainly we put a lot of pressure on the U-boats, so much so they had to come in to the bay of any of those ports underwater and came right into the big concrete pens themselves. But again, I'm thinking of one occasion where we dropped the bombs on the pens, and they're about 10 feet thick of concrete, made no difference. But next door to it were all the buildings where many of the U-boat crews live. And so if you bomb those, they're just as, shall we say, more action there than on the U-boat itself. If you kill all your crew, U-boats don't go out. So there's that side of it you have to be aware of.
Just another little snippet about Bomber Command, which I can talk about endlessly. When the war started, the German Navy had 16 capital ships of any size, lots of smaller ships, but 16 capital ships. By the time the war had finished, the Navy had sunk 3. The Norwegians sank 1, the Russians sank 1, and Fleet Air Arm sank 1. And Bomber Command sank 6 and put 2 out of action for the remainder of the war. So we won the best naval battle of the war, apart from anything else.
I've been on a couple of thousand bomber raids, and it takes about half an hour for the whole lot of them to go through. They're not just in one group, but they're spread over about 30 minutes or so. But nonetheless, that's a lot of aeroplanes, and at night time you've got them burned. They're down there below there on either side of you, and you're getting in the slipstream of one, and then you move out, and then you get in the slipstream of some. They're around you all the time. It's a very touchy area. You have to be very conscious of it, and you ask, talking to your gunners, can you see anyone close to you, or that sort of thing, and where are they, and so you have to be aware all the time. And there's the other thing that does happen, people can let bombs go above you. They shouldn't, of course, and the bomb aimer can see there's an aeroplane down there, and I had bombs actually coming down between the wing and the tail. It was as close as that. The whole string of bombs came down, and that was a bit exciting.
I almost had a very personal experience. I had a girlfriend at the time who I was going to meet outside the Cumberland Hotel opposite Marble Arch. And I was coming from the city side, she was coming from the Paddington side, and a V2 bomb came down. A V2 came down faster than the speed of sound, and the first thing, it exploded, and then the sound coming down. And I'm running about 3 minutes late, and suddenly there's an enormous explosion, columns of smoke, so I'm hastening to get up the corner thinking that I'd better get a new girlfriend. And fortunately she was 3 minutes late too. So we had a nice reunion when we got together. Well, it had no real significance for me. It was just another operation basically. And no one knew that, well, not certainly I didn't know that was the big day, but we went across and through bad weather, which we never would have flown in normally, but that was why we went out, I guess. One of the reasons was the success that the Germans thought that no one in their right minds had started invasion when the weather was that bad. But having bombed the gun emplacement on Pointe-du-Hoc and turning round to come home, it was on. You could just see an endless row of boats as far as the eye could see, thousands of them. And as I've said before, there were 5,000 small boats bringing in the first 130,000 troops, and they were guarded by 300 ships of the line, including 6 battleships, and they were preceded by 300 minesweepers to make sure that everything was clear. So when you can picture those all coming towards you almost at ground level, as I've said so often, I could have put my wheels down and taxied back home. I was a little town called Broadway in the middle of the Cotswolds. And I had with me a Canadian wireless operator who had been taken prisoner and just released, and a Rhodesian paratrooper who had also been taken prisoner and just released. And we were both staying with this delightful old fellow who was his name was George Spencer Churchill. He was a cousin, I think, of Winston's. And he had this nice little shack of about 86 rooms in the middle of the Cotswolds, which we became quite friendly. I used to go up there every time I had an opportunity to spend a bit of time with him. So we were in the middle of this little town of Broadway, drinking ourselves to death with the local cider. And I don't remember doing it, but I have at home a red ensign, which they told me later was on the top of the church. And I saw the church later, and how I got up there, I do not know. So that was VE Day for me.
I was in a pub in Hull, having a day off, and it was announced in the pub that the war's over. So there was lots of people clapping and cheering, and more beer and more beer. No, just glad that it was over. Glad to see the end of it.